Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I want to go ahead and spend some time and go ahead and try doing some work on Chapter 2, Equipment and Supply Selection. And so here goes a little lecture on Chapter 2. The author talks about the definition of instructional equipment. Now, you and I use that all the time, and so let's see what they're talking about right here. The author defines your instructional equipment as a movable or fixed unit of furniture, an instrument, machine, apparatus, or kit. And so it can be any one of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things. Now, one of the things about them is that each one of these pieces of equipment retains its original shape and appearance with use. So whenever we use it, it stays the same. It's also non-expendable. That means we're not going to use it for a little while and then run out. It represents an investment of money. People are going to spend a whole lot of money, maybe on a piece of equipment or something like that. It is a capital kind of investment, and it doesn't lose its identity. If it's a welding machine, it stays a welding machine. We don't change the terminology there. Instructional equipment ought to be used by teachers and students. Teachers to teach and to instruct and demonstrate, students to gain skills. And it's a single piece or complex apparatus used to perform a particular function. It could be just a single instrument like let's say a volt-ohm meter, or else it could be one part of a very complicated piece of equipment. And then a number of parts of the same kind that belong together or used together. We have in some classes these things called clickers. You may have 30 of them for a class. They all look the same. They all function in the same way, but every student uses them to be able to answer questions and things like that. And so that would be an example of that particular definition of instructional equipment. Now, what are some curriculum considerations that we need to deal with, dealing with our equipment? First of all, we need to define that the curriculum goals and performance objectives ought to be the prime consideration when equipping or re-equipping a lab. What are the goals and objectives that we want as we train our students, as we have them do things in that lab? We want them to learn some things, but then we want to be able to see some kind of results. And it gets back to your instructional objectives. There's really two components of it. First of all, it's the knowledge that the student needs to have, and then it's the skill or the performance that we're looking for. And so maybe some equipment may be appropriate for learning basics that may be too advanced for students. We would need to build up their skills till they could use that more advanced piece of equipment. But yet we don't know that unless we know exactly what it is we're trying to teach. All equipment must support the curriculum or provide safety protection. And I'm going to circle that right there. Safety protection to the student or the equipment. And that's a direct quote from your book by a researcher named Gillespie. Every piece of equipment must be important for us. as we train, but yet it's also got to be safe. Now, this equipment is also purchased and supplied with very, very close support from the Occupational Advisory Committee. You and I don't need to have any kind of piece of equipment in our lab that our advisory committee doesn't approve of or think that we should have. Obviously, we can't meet with them 24/7, but we could still contact them via email, via telephone. We ought to have that kind of close working relationship with them that we can bounce some ideas across them. That you would be interested in getting this particular machine. What do you think about it? Is it good? Is it bad? And so that would kind of fulfill that consideration. But we always need to work in close concert with our advisory committees. Priority should go for high quality equipment. A piece of equipment that is constantly breaking or is in need of repair is no use to you and I. It's just taking up space and also pulling from some of our very limited financial resources. Now, of course, we deal with this balancing act. I guess it would be my best way to describe it. Basically, what we can afford versus what is reliable and of high enough quality. Obviously, you get what you pay for, but what can you afford? So you and I have to be able to kind of balance it out to the point that you and I can get good equipment, but still afford it and not break the bank or break the budget. You know, industries, especially successful industries, don't have that problem. They need a piece of equipment, they go out and buy it. Not so with us. We got to really be good consumers. And then finally, need to transfer the skills and knowledge learned on school equipment to similar equipment in the field. Especially for us in the technical college system, we want to be able to use some equipment that's going to function the same way as it would when our students go out into the world of work. Ideally, we'd like them to use the exact same kinds of equipment. That would certainly lessen the downtime that it might take for them to kind of get used to that equipment and learn it. But again, we get back to a situation. What can we afford versus what we can accommodate in our classrooms. So here's some basic equipment selection guidelines to kind of look at here. When we're purchasing our equipment, we got to kind of deal with space. You and I aren't unlimited in that. We've got so many square feet, so many cubic feet of space to work with, and we've got to get equipment that's going to fit that. Power and utilities. Obviously, we need electricity. We may need running water, air, all kinds of other things in our labs. And so what are the issues there? And let's face it, if you have only so much electrical power going into a room or a building, and let's say we're putting a welding lab and we just don't have the current to support that, your breakers are going to be tripping all the time. You'll have electrical issues. You may even have shorts and maybe some other disasters. But we have to know those kinds of things. Maintenance. A lot of people that I know that teach in labs do their own maintenance. Well, let's face it, sometimes there's some equipment that we've got that it's just beyond our expertise to be able to fix. but we also need to do periodically maintain our equipment, and much of that is can be done by us. Major repairs, we'll need a technician to get that done, but we need to have a regularly scheduled uh, maintenance period. And normally for a lot of people, it's between semesters. I know that's when I do my maintenance on my PCs. They're going from 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock every day. If I have some major downtime on one of them, then I'll take it offline and do some work with it. But normally, the whole lab gets some updates, gets some maintenance and cleaning during the breaks. Heavy duty construction. Students are tough on equipment, just how it is, and so you get some really cheap light duty equipment. Get ready for it to go out very, very quickly because of the use and abuse that it's going to take. Now, ideally, we'd like to be able to get the same piece of equipment to teach basic and advanced skills. That means we don't have to buy two pieces, especially whenever they're expensive. So where we can, look for machines, look for equipment that can do both. Getting back to drafting, use the old-time drafting machines for basic drafting and advanced drafting. They had no problem using either, doing either basic or advanced drafting on those things because they all function the same way. Those old elbow drafting machines. It's just the skill of the user that got better and better and better as time went on. But that's not always the case. And again, we ought to try to use the same kind of equipment that's being used in industry, and sometimes that's easy to do, sometimes it's not. Here's one that I kind of maybe don't really agree with the author. He says don't use specific brands. I sort of like that. For example, way back when I started training to be an auto mechanic in a trade school in Jennings, our instructor said that you wanted tools that would be able to last and take some use and abuse. And he recommended either two types, Craftsman or Snap-on. Snap-on tools are really not a consumer type of tool. They're used by professionals. Craftsman, on the other hand, is professional as well as consumer. And so I started buying Craftsman tools a long time ago because of their lifetime warranty. I could have bought a socket 15 years ago and I break it tomorrow. I bring it back to a Sears store and they replace it, no questions asked. And so that's the kind of brands that maybe some auto mechanics, some diesel mechanic students might want to deal with. When I taught woodworking, I looked at all of the woodworking tools that are out there, the saws, the drill presses, lathes, and things like that. I was always impressed with the Rockwell brand versus others that are out there. I guess your author doesn't want you to be stuck on one specific brand in order to kind of, as we're going to talk about later, to kind of satisfy the bid process. But I would not be ashamed nor adverse to specifying a specific brand of whatever and putting out those bids to those companies that provide that particular brand of equipment. So that's just me. But nevertheless, get advisory committee approval. Whoever is on your advisory committee, chances are if you got, half dozen people that are on it, they come from different companies. They may be using different equipment, different suppliers, and so like that, you can kind of get an idea of what's the best for you. But yet, always get their input in those kinds of decisions. It'll only help you. Now, whenever you and I get ready to order a piece of equipment, we got to be able to write some specifications. And we go through a bid process. We write up, let's say, a welding machine. We know what we want it to do. And all the bells and whistles and things like that we want on it that are appropriate for our students. So we write it all up. And then we send it to our accountants, or to our business office. And then we send a list of vendors out there. All those bids go out to those companies, and they give us a price that they're going to be willing to charge us on each one of on whatever it is we've sent out. And then we sit down one day and we open up all the sealed bids, and then lo and behold, company XYZ has the lowest bid, and therefore they are awarded the bid, and we buy it from them. The bid process starts with you and me. We are part of initiating this process. It's our job to write specifications, and I would highly recommend that you do not pass that job on to anybody else. I know we got a lot to do, but if you have a department or some portion of your organization where somebody else does it for you, then you're going to get what they think is appropriate. You need to work together with those people, so everybody's got a really clear understanding about what it is you want in that piece of equipment. You want to avoid overly restrictive requirements because they may result in higher costs. Again, I'm kind of ambivalent about that. If you know what you want and know what you can afford, then don't be afraid to go out and get it. If you want this specific piece of equipment, in some cases, there may be others that are just as good from your author's point of view that you could get at probably a better price and still get the job done. But I, from my experience, have been burnt many times by equipment that fulfilled my specifications, but I never saw a picture of it, didn't see it before I received it, and what I got wasn't what I had in mind. And now with the advent of the internet, many vendors will have the pictures of that that equipment that you're looking for, and some really in-depth descriptions of it. So that's maybe not such a big issue, but I keep getting back to, don't be afraid to go get what something that you think you need and that your advisory committee thinks you can need and can afford. And that's the key. You can afford it. Some legal action may be taken by bidders. Well, let's face it, if company XYZ is getting all your business and ABC is not, well, they could take some legal action on us. And let's face it, these people do this every day. It's their job to sell products. They understand how the process works. Is it perfect? Probably not. I've rarely heard of any kind of bidder taking legal action because they weren't getting the business. Maybe you have, but as long as your specifications are very clear, very concise, then they don't get the bid. Then they just need to get to start going down on their price. It's as simple as that. And then you have your sole source vendors. Some pieces of equipment, only one company makes it. And when they do that, that makes things very, very simple for us. They are the only ones that we're going to be dealing with. And so always know those people and work with their sales reps so you can get the best deal that you possibly can. Now, one thing you might want to consider is equipment rental. One of the good things about equipment rental is that there's no capital outlay expenditures that your institution incurs. The equipment service is guaranteed by the rental agreement. Once you and that vendor agree on a contract, everybody knows what they're responsible for, and you move on. Expensive equipment can be available for a relatively small cost. So instead of paying $50,000 for a piece of equipment, you can pay maybe $1,000 a year renting it, and thus still get the benefit from the equipment, but then save a whole lot of money in the meantime. And then as part of the rental way of doing things, some companies will have also the option for lease purchase. You lease a piece of equipment for so many years, and then after that, it's yours. That might be advantageous to you. I kind of just like the rental itself. The best example that I can think about of that is our copiers at our school. Way back when I started teaching at Acadian campus, we bought our copiers. We sent out bids to all kind of copier vendors, and they sent us back all kinds of bids on the prices to buy those Xerox type copiers, and they were ours. We tagged them in our inventory, and unfortunately, 4 or 5 years after they were bought, they were starting to wear out, and it's cost us quite a bit to maintain them. And we started looking at ways to kind of cut that cost, and it was pretty much a no-brainer for those of us that were involved in the process that maybe we need to go to a rental type of situation. And it was no problem for a number of companies in Lafayette to kind of come in, give us bids on renting our office copiers or copiers for the school. And we saved just a ton of taxpayer money going to that. And it was no problem. Whenever we had problems, we got on the phone, told them what the problem was. They were there very, very quickly to solve the problem. If it was a major issue, they made a phone call. They brought a brand new copier to take its place and brought the other one for repair. Very, very wonderful situation. Even now, the new copiers that we have, we just renewed a contract. These copiers are all networked now. When there's a problem, these machines even diagnose themselves and send messages over the internet, and we wind up seeing some copier technicians come in the front door, and we're not aware of any problems, but they go in and do what they've got to do. It's just a great situation for us, and so equipment rental is definitely a possibility for us. Getting back, I guess, to the bidding procedures, supply and equipment lists are made available to vendors. So you and I just make a laundry list of the stuff that we need, and we take that list, give it to so many, 5, 6, 10, whatever it takes of vendors, and they then send us back some sealed bids. The envelopes and information that they've got will arrive either at our school or at our accounting departments, and they'll be gathered, and normally we'll have a cutoff date for the vendors to send their bids back. You know, they're due at 12 o'clock on whatever day. They're open at an open meeting at the institution. Normally all kinds of people gather around from all the departments, take a look at the bids, or whoever wants to show up, and then we award the bid to the lowest bidder that meets our specification. Not always the lowest bid gets the bid. It's time whenever you have a really complex piece of equipment, you just go through the listing and see if that piece of machinery makes the bid. I've been on a number of those kinds of meetings where the lowest dollar amount didn't get the bid because it did not meet the specifications exactly. Somebody just kind of left something out, or else they substituted something which wasn't what we wanted. And then the last point is something that I've worked with, especially with the technical college system, that a whole lot of other people have, and that's state contract. A large number of electronic vendors, like that deal with computers and things like that, have sort of gone to state purchasing and done all the paperwork that they need to do to be put on the state contract. They will offer equipment at a price that is competitive with a whole lot of other companies. But yet, like if I want to buy me a printer, well, then I can go to the Hewlett-Packard state contract and look through their printers and pick the one that I can afford and that meets my needs, and I don't have to worry about a bid process because they have already been approved as a vendor for state agencies. And more companies are starting to do this, and it's tough to get put on the state contract list, but once you're there, then every state agency is wide open to your business. And so we're starting to see more and more companies get involved with that, especially those maybe not so much into the vocational side of things. There are a number of vendors out there like Edmund Scientific that handle labs for biology, chemistry, things like that that are on state contract that you can buy. And we're not talking really, modest amounts of money. Some equipment that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can get off a state contract is really making a difference. So if you can, I would highly recommend that you do that. And I've got a link in a later slide that has a direct link to the state contract homepage. Now, we've talked about equipment so far, but yet we also need something else in our labs, and that's supplies. And this slide talks about instructional supplies. These are consumable materials. We use them and we can use them up. They can also include written materials like textbooks, workbooks, reference books, etc. Let's face it, if you're in public schools, you get a classroom set of books. Students use them for a year. They get checked out. They check them back into you. You use them again for the next year. But over time, those books start to get some wear and tear on them. And so they do get consumed. And after a while, whenever we're starting to miss pages and the covers are falling off, it's time to get a new set of books. Expendable supplies like paper, welding rods, diesel fuel, and things like that, we use all the time in our labs. Toner, for those of us that have printers, it wears out. We got to go back and replace the toner cartridges or the ink. All the paper that you and I use to copy things and print out stuff for our students. 500 sheets will last us for only so long, and then it's time to break out a new ream of paper. We also have like non-expendable supplies, which are a little different, like bricks. We used to have a masonry program at our school. We bought a pallet of bricks. I forgot how much it cost us now, but they delivered the bricks, and so our masonry students use those bricks over and over and over and over again. They would make practice their mortar skills, and then once they would put them up, set them up, and the teacher would take a look at what they did, they'd break it down, take all the mortar off, and then use them again, over and over and over again. After a while, bricks started getting broken up and cracked and unusable, and so we would go back and buy some more. Hand tools, especially like power tools like drills and things like that. Those things work real well, but after a while they get dirty, they get misused and abused, and they break. And so we go back and buy them again. Flash drives, things like that. And then finally, last category is audiovisual supplies like tapes, CDs, DVDs. We take one, we burn them, give it to a student, and then we need another one. The old cassette tapes, they would work real well for audio recordings, but then after a while, you use them enough, they would start to get scratched and crinkled up, and the sound quality would start to go down, and we'd need to do it again. So instructional supplies are really a critical part of our programs, and so we need to also order them whenever we need them. Now, that kind of leads into supply orders. When do we need it? Well, sometimes we might need something, but we may not get it right then and there. In industry, they have usually what is called a just-in-time kind of inventory. And a lot of vendors will work within like next day delivery for a whole lot of people. And I guess if you work for a company that can afford that kind of stuff to ship it, that's great, because let's face it, they don't have it, they're losing money. But for us, we have to kind of be a little more careful. We want to avoid frequent small orders. One of the things we're trying to do at Acadian right now is to try to get the same type of laser printer, or at least black and white laser printer, for all of our instructors to use. If we could do that, then all we would need would be one toner cartridge instead of 50 different ones. And so we could buy, let's say 10, 12 per year, and probably save maybe $10, $12 a cartridge if we would buy them, let's say 10 or 12 at a time, and do it maybe once a year and keep them on in inventory. So try to keep from doing that kind of thing. But don't order more than you need. You don't have the room to, in many cases, to store that. Buy in quantity when possible and appropriate, like I've just said. But then be prepared for shipping delays. We were waiting for some equipment. Kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, we got the word that from the vendor that you may have to wait some more because the equipment was made out there in New Jersey, in a town that was right smack in the middle of that hurricane that went out there and destroyed most of New Jersey and much of the East Coast. And so that company that made that equipment that we were looking for was just starting to get off its feet and try to take care of some back orders. So don't be surprised that you may be looking at some delays in shipping that you have no control over. And then look at your maximum minimum inventory control. I know we got a lot to do as teachers, but one of the main things that you need to be able to do, and I need to be able to do, is to keep track of our inventory of supplies. Whether it's daily, weekly, whatever it is, you and I need to keep track of that. It might not be any more than just looking at some shelves. Oh, I might need some more erasers if you're teaching a drafting class, or else, oh, my paper load's getting a little short. I might need to make a paper order in the next 2 or 3 weeks. You know, if you've taught enough, what your consumption of supplies is like. You want to keep it at the maximum, but if it gets to a minimum, then you got a problem. Your activities are going to be curtailed and maybe even shut down if you're not on top of your inventory. And it may be as complicated as having a computerized system that anytime something gets taken out, it's accounted for. We're going to try to find and make sure that you have some kind of system in place that's going to work for you by the end of this class. We'll have a whole lot more to say about that. Here's some terms dealing with shipping that you and I may or may not know. We might see something that says FOB buyer, which means free on board. If that's the case, then the vendor will pay the shipping cost, not you or me. So they're charging us in their price to cover the shipping. The FOB seller is free on board, but the ownership of the material transfers from the seller to the buyer when it's turned over to the shipping agent. And so you and I are paying the shipping. So when it goes out that vendor's door, you and I are paying some shipping company to bring it to us. And then the final part is free on board seller, freight allowed. It's the same as free on board seller, but the buyer can deduct shipping cost or the vendor pays the freight. So like this, whenever we write the check uh, for that piece of equipment, we can deduct that shipping cost out of there, and in essence, the supplier is paying the shipping. Really, it's only FOB seller is when you and I pay the shipping right there. Now, obviously, you want to be uh, well aware of who's responsible for that cost. Then, whenever we get our stuff, all that good stuff gets delivered to us. First thing you and I got to do is go back and inspect that stuff. Inspect that supply. Because let's face it, there might have been damage done to it. And if there is, you and I don't want to accept damaged goods. So they need to be sent back, or else that seller needs to be made aware. Was it there? Was the damage done there at the seller's place, or was it done in transit by the delivery company? Then once you get it, you need to add it to inventory. Get that done. What about an emergency purchase? Something breaks that you got to have. You need to have some kind of procedure in place that will allow for that kind of situation to take place, where you can make an emergency purchase and get this piece of equipment or supply in real quick. And work with your vendors. Let's face it, they want our business. Many of them are more than willing to work with us to get some things done. And so, utilize them. Get to know them. And once you get to know them, they get to know you and your needs. And they can really focus in on providing us what we need to get our programs up and running and going. And what about some other topics? Here is the link to the Louisiana Approved State Contracts page. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get to that page. Looks like I'm not. I'm in another mode here in order to highlight some of this stuff. And so just copy and paste this this link in your browser, and you'll see a listing of all of the state contracts that we've got available to us. Gifts and donations. We've had a number of car dealerships in our particular area that have donated cars to our auto mechanics or diesel mechanics program. Quite frankly, a lot of these cars are damaged in some way, shape, or fashion. With all the hurricanes that have taken place, we're getting a whole lot of water damaged cars come through. Now, obviously, you can't put those things on the road, but you can certainly take those cars and tear them down and use them for training purposes. They're perfect for that. And so these automotive companies are more than willing to do that. There's some procedures that you have to follow. Check with your organization, see what they are, and see if you can get some donated equipment or gifts. Maybe some company is out there and say, look, I want to give you this piece of equipment. We'll go out and buy it. You know, it doesn't happen very often, but some companies do. Chrysler gave one of our technical colleges a gift of a couple of $1 million for some equipment that they needed. Government and state surplus. Here in Louisiana, you get all kinds of state agencies that get rid of some equipment. For example, Delgado Community College in New Orleans was doing some remodeling in one of their buildings that was damaged in Hurricane Katrina, and they sent out a message to all the other technical colleges saying that they had some room petitions that they had that they were going to be scrapping and getting rid of, and if anybody wanted them, just to contact a certain person there, and if you could go by and pick them up, you were more than welcome to do so. And so we jumped on that offer, and since we have a truck driving program, it was very, very mutually beneficial to all of us for us to be able to take a trip down to New Orleans. And our maintenance guys picked up about, I would estimate, over $100,000 worth of petitions out there that had some wear and tear on them, but we were able to use them all over the campus. And some of our business departments, and I had a couple of sets of petitions in my old lab. They were great and didn't cost us a thing other than just the diesel and the time to go out there and get them. And we've also had other schools get portions of them from us so that they could use. So many governmental agencies, state agencies, get rid of furniture, equipment all the time. You just need to go out there and be aware of it. Get on their website for state surplus. I couldn't tell you what it is right now, but just go ahead and Google it, or Louisiana State Surplus. And they have a monthly kind of email newsletter that they'll have pictures and descriptions of all the stuff that they have that's there for at surplus. So check it out. Single versus multi-brand equipment. You got a piece of equipment. It's one made by one brand. You buy it, and maybe there's the same thing in another company's brand and name, and then you got all these different kinds of equipment out there. At one time, I had a computer lab with about 4 different brands of computer in it. Now, computers are computers. They all got the same parts, all got the same, all work the same, all got the same basic components. Well, you looked at my lab, it looked like a jigsaw puzzle. Big monitors, small monitors, different types of CPU units, tower units, you name it. It had it. Because pretty much I took everybody's hand-me-downs, and then the new stuff that we did buy didn't match the old stuff. And so about 2 years ago, they were going to talk about upgrading my computer lab, and I said, one of the first things we're going to do, we're going to go with all the same computers. I don't care who gets the bid, but they're all going to be the same. We're going to get 20 of them. Well, it didn't work out that we could get 20, but I did get 10. And so for a short time, I had 10 Vostro computers that are all in one. And it just revolutionized my lab space-wise. And so the next year, we got 10 more. And so now my lab, when you look at it, all the computers are the same model. And so the lab looks better. the lab functions better. Anything that needs to be fixed, we have the same models, and so going with a single brand has revolutionized my lab. It may not be the case for yours. Then finally, equipment amortization. Let's face it, equipment wears out, and we got to get rid of it. We kind of reach a point of diminishing returns if we keep fixing stuff that keeps getting broken. But sooner or later, we have to have some kind of plan in place of how we scrap and get rid of old, obsolete, broken equipment. So we'll talk more about that as time goes on. So this ends my little slideshow here. So I'm going to go ahead and shut that down. But before I end the little lecture, I want to go to the web page on Joule, and I have included on Chapter 2 a sample bill of lading. This is just kind of like the receipt that you and I might get. That'll be filled out. I don't expect you to do anything with this. I just wanted to kind of show you an example of what it looks like. See where it has shipping from, whoever your vendor is, ship to, your name or your department's name and address, then third-party freight charges billed to, who's paying the shipping, you are or is your supplier. If there's any special instructions dealing with the shipping, they would be put there. There's, of course, just a lot of administrative stuff of the lading number, the tracking number of the shipment, the carrier's name, if you're doing, is it UPS or some trucking company, and of course mark concerning the freight charge terms right there. And then you've got your space for the products that are getting shipped to you, and then more information about the commodities that you've got. And this is just like I said, just a very typical bill of lading that's out there for you. So just take a look at it, and now hopefully now that we're done with this chapter, you're going to have a better feel for exactly what it is that that they might be asking you for. So that will end our discussion on Chapter 2, and so I will shut our lecture down at this point and start working on Chapter 3.